Hi, I'm Antoria Howard, and I'm an Assistant Deputy Attorney General for Administration and Management. We also have Nicole Lake, who is our Chief Counsel. We have Rowan Kane, who is our Deputy Policy Director. We have He Lee, who is our Business Manager, Business Office Manager. And we also have, I believe, Susan Kavanaugh, who is our HR Manager. And we have Margaret Chappell, our deputy, coming in. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I understand that you just in a day or so had sent us some of the information, and we really didn't have enough time to view. So it's kind of like a late hour, and it's a little unfair to a lot of us that we have other committees, and so we're going to see if we can be able to get as much information. If we might have to do another meeting. Okay. So I'll give you the floor.
Okay. Well, we at the meeting with the Appropriations Committee, with the governor, what the governor has suggested with regards to the Attorney General's budget, we would again ask that that figure be the figure that's awarded to our office for the next 2 budget years. We believe that we will be able to maintain where we're at right now. Some of the questions that were asked at the last meeting were with regards to the retirements that are coming up in 2022. We do have several of our staff who are eligible for retirement. We have had a few retirements in the past couple of months. Our attorneys have been going slowly, and we're hoping if they're going to go that will continue to happen. We have approximately, I believe, 51 attorneys who are eligible as of June 30th of next year. So we are hoping to refill, if possible, all of those positions for all of those attorneys who are planning to retire. We are hoping to receive also permission from OPM to do some overlapping. We know we won't be in a budget position to do a lot of overlapping, but if we could do some to just make sure there's a smooth transition. And we're also presently involved with succession planning for our staff now, for our attorneys. And we've impressed upon our division directors and our section chiefs that they should be involved in this process and to get this process rolling so that if all of these attorneys to retire, we'll be able to at least keep the office running. So one question that was asked was about the settlement monies. And again, and I believe the Attorney General said this in his testimony, that this office does bring quite a bit of money into the general fund, into the state each year. A question was asked with regards to defensive litigation. And if we look at the monies that were paid out in settlement, it's far less than what was brought in, what was brought in. So we don't exactly keep figures of each defensive case that is settled, but our position is that we do save the state money. Our office saves the state money with regards to settlement cases, and we believe that our attorneys do a great job, and we're hoping that we're able to keep status quo as far as the position count, and also to hopefully maybe gain new attorneys or be able to afford new attorneys.
Ms. Howard, what I would like to do is we could go question by question and then give opportunity for some of my committee members to maybe respond or maybe do a follow-up on those individual questions, and we can go question by question. So if we can go back to the first answer, we talked about your 50 retirees.
Yes.
And but before I do that, I have some questions. Do you have a dollar amount, and what would be the years that they will retire? Is it 50 in the next year, or is it broken down over the next couple of years?
That is just the we don't know when they will go, but they are all eligible to go as of June 30th of 2022. I believe several agencies will be affected by retirements during that time period, and we believe we will also, that those who are eligible, we're hoping they all will not go. I know a few have expressed to me that they would like to stay. So we are hoping that we'll be able to keep at least some of those lawyers. But as I stated, we've had a few who are eligible have retired over the past couple of months. We received notice that 2 will be retiring as of April 1st. So we're hoping that if they go, 2 at a time or 3 at a time versus, 40 people at a time.
Okay, all right, thank you. So do we have any questions or response from the committee members? Representative Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, ma'am, for your answers on this. So I'm going to start with the retirements. You have, well, I'm going to go in between. So the number of positions you have filled are 272, but you have 311 that are funded. Is that correct?
Yes, budgeted, yes.
Okay, that's in your PS line now, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay, that's what I want. Okay, and 39 of them are vacant. And what I'm looking here is you've got an authorization to fill only 10.
Yes, so far those are the vacancies. If we were to try to fill all 311 from the budgeted money, we could not do it, given the salaries. So we have asked for 10 positions. These are all basically refills. We've had attorneys who've retired over the past couple of years, and there was a semi-freeze. Mm-hmm. So that has been, that freeze has been lifted, and we were able to fill those 10 positions. We just made 3 offers in the past couple of weeks to attorneys to come aboard. We're also in the process of trying to hire a secretary and an IT person. So all of those vacancies that have been vacant for over a year, we have just received the approval to fill those vacancies, and we're in the process of interviewing and trying to hire.
Okay, so I guess the reason why I asked that question was because if you have 311 authorized, but you don't have enough money to cover the 311, how much money do you have to actually cover?
We right now we have, I believe, enough to fill those, obviously those 10 positions right now, but we also receive money from other state agencies. They fund several positions, so that's why our census is over 300, because of those bodies that are paid for by other agencies.
Like Department of Children and Families, or?
No, we have the Treasurer's Office, a Second Injury Fund. We have the Tobacco Fund. DEEP pays for 6 positions. Department of Transportation pays for 7 positions, and Department of Banking, I believe, pays for 1.
So, and that's the 39. That's part of the 39 that you have.
No, that's not included in the 39.
Okay. So yes, Susan, are you talking to me? Susan? No, she must be frozen. She is
Oh.
frozen. Okay.
She's
Yeah,
on mute.
I see her hand up there as if she was getting ready to say something, but
Susan, Sue, are you mute? You're on mute.
I am. No, I wasn't saying anything. Thank
Oh.
you, though.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. So if you could, I know, just send us back. What are you what positions do you have in your agency that are paid by other agencies? That really would, I think maybe that would help us in understanding, because the number becomes a little different when you have other agencies paying for them. So they really but they're counted in your position counts.
The 311 does not include the positions that are funded elsewhere, funded by other agencies. No.
Okay. All right. Well, if you could just send us that, and what the 10 is paid for, you might be able to do another 10 if within your budget right now. So you have the ability to maybe do 20 positions that are in your budget now, correct?
Absolutely, right now. And we if one retires, we can bring in another person. And that's what we've been doing, is refilling. So we have the money. And in some instances, we're able to save money because most of the attorneys who are retiring are in AAG 4. And we usually hire at the AAG 2 level. So we're able to save some money for additional hiring.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your answers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Can you also provide us with a breakdown of how many attorney positions that are outside of your budget?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any other questions or comments from any of the committee members?
Representative Belinsky.
Yes.
Or Senator Austin too.
Oh, okay. And I can't see the hand.
You need to open your participant panel.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. Every day it's,
Okay. Oh, there you go.
yeah.
Okay, Representative Belinsky.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Howard, you unsolicited answered my main question before, because I wanted to start with a thank you for being a net positive budget entity. The Attorney General's office is very, very easy to see its way through because of its return on investment in its awards, in its good work, and of course, probably more than in recent memory, the work in social justice is pretty timely. So this is not an office to be neglected. So my question was, when an AG, when you lose as many as maybe 31, 39, all the numbers are throwing around. I was going to ask if it's reasonable to assume that we'll be hiring attorneys in that are less tenured and therefore, have at least temporary cost savings. And you've already said that. So is there anything in our collective bargaining agreements that keep us locked in to a higher wage scale in some of these positions?
Presently, the contract is, we're presently in negotiations now. And right now we don't have any idea of if our attorneys will be continue to receive raises. Over the past 2 years. Yep. They were unionized. They received a couple of raises. Right. Our department heads, who are now section chiefs, also received stipends. So we're not sure if that's going to continue. into the new contract year.
Right. Oh, that's it. That's an interesting consideration. I would just hope that that we do fulfill, the possibility of, like you had referred, replacing AG4s with AG2s, and at least having this thing be a step off rather than a permanent fixed cost. So I have no other questions, Mr. Chair, and I thank the good lady for her explanations, and I thank the Attorney General for the good work his office does.
If I could just
Thank you,
add to that-
Representative. Thank you. Senator Austin?
Thank you very much. I have a question revolving around the defensive cases, settlement monies paid out by the state. So I'm curious on the FY 18, 19, and 20, those dollar amounts, were they to one person or were they all class action?
Those were, I believe, they were not to one person, no. That involved the entire defensive litigation caseload for that particular fiscal year. So it was
Oh,
not
okay.
on one case, no.
Okay,
These
great.
were just numbers. We don't keep individual numbers of each case that is settled defensively. So we were able to get these figures actually from the comptroller's office, who issues the checks. So this is the figure that we were able to provide.
Okay, so this is not just one particular case, and the cases could be anything from an individual case to a class action lawsuit. This
Absolutely.
incorporates everything.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. And I want to go back to what Representative Walker was talking about in regards to positions. You had said that the positions that you had permission to fill were 10 positions. You have 39 vacancies. So that will bring you down to 29 vacancies. Is that what I'm interpreting here?
That
Because the numbers kept going
yeah.
back and forth, and I was just trying to get a handle on what we're talking about here.
they are going back and forth, but again, no, actually, yes, a few of them aren't within the budgeted position, but we also have a few of those positions that are vacant, which will be filled and paid for by other state agencies. So not all 10 will bring us down to 20. Not all 10 are in that number. 10 of the refills.
All right. So I'm confused even more now. So you have a number of, so if you could send us, I think Representative Baker was asking this question, but if you could send us the number of positions that you have in your agency by job class, the number of positions that are vacant within your agency, the number of positions that are paid for by other departments by job class, and the positions that are being filled, the 10 that are coming on, where they're going. And then I really don't understand the question when it said, when Representative Walker said, you had said you don't have the money to pay for all 39 positions. But we're not asking for positions. We are asking for positions that were funded within the budget over the last 2 years. So how could we not have the money? Was there money that was moved from from personnel services into another line item? And if you could get that to us too, that would be great.
There was no money moved.
So that makes less sense to me than ever, because so maybe, so you talked a little bit about the raises, but the raises were designed to come out of the RSA account. Did you pay for all the raises out of your appropriated dollars? Is that what the issue is?
No, the issue is, it's my understanding, and our business manager is also aligned, and Maybe he can explain it better, but our understanding is that you all give us a pot of money. And you say that's enough for 311 positions.
Right,
With the positions that we have with the attorneys, investigators, and the salaries that they are presently making, that's not enough to pay for 212 attorneys and 101 support staff. So that's, we get a pot of money, and right now we can afford, let's say, 290 of those 311 positions that are budgeted.
actually, when we give you a pot of money, it's supposed to pay for all those appropriated positions by the salaries that they are being paid.
Well,
So
then,
we don't just give you a pot of money and say, please do the best you can. On personnel services, we give you money that covers the position count that that you have. So I mean, so I'm not certain. So if you could just get us that information, that would be very helpful. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Weston. I think what I'm hearing from some of the committee members is we're not understanding how many positions you have in your office, and then outside attorneys that kind of like over your watch. So if you could give us a breakdown along with the salaries, and then if you could let us know when you gave your raises out, where were those positions for? Were they in the AG's office, or they were positions that were in other departments? If you could kind of like give the breakdown so that we can kind of get some understanding and some clarity.
well, all of the employees are within the Attorney General's office. They are paid for by other agencies because they do the work, or most of the work of those agencies, the legal work, but they are Attorney General employees. They're employees of this office. Any raises were given out pursuant to the contracts. And now most of our employees are in a bargaining unit, from our secretaries, IT, now our attorneys are in bargaining units. So most of those raises came through the bargaining process.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Representative Stanham. Representative, turn your mic off. Okay, there you go.
Sorry, I didn't hear you calling me. My dogs were barking at the same time. Just wanted to thank, so Senator Austin asked my main question to get an understanding of the vacant positions by job class and the authorized to fill by job class. Because I saw you did that with the retirements. It was pretty helpful. My question was on the, my second question on the affirmative cases. You have antitrust in 2019. You didn't have the number of cases involved with that. That's 6 million.
Yes. We were unable to determine exactly how many cases.
Okay.
That
I wasn't sure if I just missed it or accidentally deleted it or what happened. So you don't know. Okay. It's more than 5, less than 100.
It's definitely less than 100.
Because I was kind of looking at, trying to see if there was any correlation between, like 2018, there's 12 cases at 17 million, but at 2020, there's 367 at 24 million. So it's really all over the shop. And the same 12 attorneys did manage, massively different, or no, that's 308 cases. So So that, you know, it's a big caseload for the attorneys is really my point, was trying to get to that. Is in the finance tobacco payments, 118 million in 2020, does that have any Purdue Pharma?
The tobacco payment? No, that's the yearly tobacco payment that's paid to the state through the master settlement agreement.
Okay. Do you, can you provide a schedule of all settlement agreements that have forward payments to the state?
Forward payments
Yeah.
meaning.
Like you just talked about, this tobacco payment has like an annual payment, it sounds like.
Oh, okay.
So if you have a schedule of those going forward, I know that's not our lane. Oh, good. Neither Chairman Walker or Austin are here, so I can ask that question. But Rep Baker is going to let me hopefully ask that question. Oh, here comes Tony. She's not happy. I'm just curious what we have estimated coming in going forward. And with those forward payments coming in, do we have any residual work that our attorneys need to do to satisfy those forward agreements? If you don't know, okay. You can
I'm sorry. I think you froze for a minute. I don't think that there are many forward payments coming in, but I'll double check that. With regards to the tobacco, I know there is work that is constantly being done on that, and we have, I believe, 2 or 3 attorneys assigned to do the tobacco work.
And with the settlements with like Purdue Pharma, and I know the other environmental things that we have going on, do we have any estimates for 2021 that'll be coming in?
For 21, I'm not sure. For 20, we'll definitely have those. For
20 was in your schedule. Fiscal year 20 was
sorry.
scheduled. Yeah,
So,
I was just wondering if you
yeah.
had an estimate on 2021. I'm just trying to get an understanding with what we have kind of annually coming in and how consistent we are.
Yeah.
Because that really just helps. And also, you know, managing the sort of number of attorneys involved. It seems like we have, you know, some concerns. You know, it seems like, you know, with people retiring. My last question on the schedule has to do with the workers' comp attorneys. We went from 11 to 10, now to 5. Are some of the outstanding hires that you need to do, are they workers' comp?
Yes. Our workers' comp section chief is currently interviewing now for attorneys. Yes.
Okay, so we're pretty desperate, it looks like there. When we are down on attorneys in any specific field, do we have to outsource to third-party vendors at all?
No, we've
Okay.
never, very rarely have we outsourced with our office. Other attorneys who are not quite as busy will pick up the slack and help out. And that's one of the, I think, advantages of the Attorney General's reorganization, that it makes it a little easier for some cross-divisional or cross-sectional teams to handle cases.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for your explanations and coming in to see us today. Thank you, Baker.
Thank you, Representative. I was not watching my time, and I didn't realize we had like only had 30 minutes. So, Ms. Howard, can you just kind of move forward and just answer some of, respond to some of the questions, and then I'll see if we have a few minutes afterwards we can have for some of our committee meetings. But I really think that we'll probably end up trying to do another meeting.
Okay. Were there any specific questions you wanted me to focus on, or?
No, if you could just kind of run through them and just give us a briefing on them.
Sure. Again, what we haven't covered before, with regards to the retirements, I believe I listed out, it does affect almost every area of our office, not only attorneys, but also support staff. And someone had asked a question the last time about diversity, and we are making a pitch to get diversity hires. I believe our office has done pretty good in the past with diversity hires, and we will continue to reach out. We make personal appeals to several affinity bar associations, and we also make personal appeals ourselves to attorneys and the law school and folks that we know on the various courts for recommendations. So we will continue to do that. And hopefully we'll be able to meet, and I believe we will be able to meet all of our diversity goals for the hiring. Again, the positions are funded. I will break those down for you. I just listed the positions. So some of these positions are support staff, but I will get you a breakdown of attorneys versus support staff. And again, we have a Chase Consumer Violence and Prevention Fund. That was from a settlement, a big settlement about 3 or 4 years ago. And specifically, it was written into that settlement funding for an attorney and a paralegal. And that one position is filled, the attorney position is filled, but it is durational in that money will run out. And then we also received money again for the second injury fund for 11 positions. 8 are filled, and we're in the process of recruiting again for 2. The tobacco fund, 2. DEEP gives us money for 6 positions. Department of Transportation, 7 positions, and Department of Banking, 1 position. And again, I will get the breakdown of attorneys' salaries and versus support staff on those.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for coming out, and we'll look forward for those responses. And you and your team have a great weekend.
Me too. Thank you all.
Senator Austin, I'm so jealous that you're outside. I was trying to get my system up and going outside, but my need to de-winterize over the weekend.
Well, you could have went out there too. You can go outside.
I had no place to sit.
The only thing is my dogs are not yet used to staying in the yard from being outside, and I've had to go chase the little one twice now. When I first got it all set up, the little one had decided to go. I have a 60 acres behind me that is not mine, but is open, and the dogs were trying to go for a walk down there. It's all cornfields, and I was like, you guys I had to take the car and drive down to get the little one. Would not listen to me at all.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, Secretary McCaw and her team have joined us.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon.
Is the secretary here?
I am. Good afternoon.
Okay. Okay. Madam Secretary, it's a pleasure to see you and your team here. Can you introduce your team?
Absolutely. It's great to see all of you here as well. Today, I am joined by Deputy Secretary Diamantis for the Office of Policy and Management. We also have Undersecretary Claire Coleman, Undersecretary Faye Brown-Bruton, who oversees our Office of Labor Relations. Kimberly Kennison is here. She's the Executive Finance Officer. She oversees the Municipal Finance Division. Paul Patamianos, who's well-known, our Executive Budget Officer. And I believe that concludes the members of the team that are participating on the Zoom today.
Well, thank you for coming out here on this sunny, beautiful afternoon. You provide us with some follow-up questions. And what I would like to do, if you wanted to maybe just go through some of them and give us if you wanted to give us a little more briefing on it. And then I was like to go question by question and see if some of my committee members had to add to it, or if they wanted some more in-depth questions. And
Very good. Would you like me to begin by, you're going to offer questions, or would you like me to walk you through the materials we provided?
so you can start with question one.
Excellent. Okay. Question number one is pertaining to COVID federal funds. Can OPM provide a breakdown of the COVID dollars? And so what we've provided for you is first a lot of discussion around the coronavirus relief fund. So we provided you with an allocation of the coronavirus relief fund by category. You will find in your package a detailed summary of every stimulus grant that came into the state of Connecticut with a description, how the funds were used and the status as to whether or not the dollars have been spent. For the coronavirus relief fund, which is about 1.38 billion, you will see that 1.318 billion has been allocated. The remaining pending allocations that have been made is about 5%, but by and large, those dollars have been allocated. In the package, you will also see the categories of the funding, how it's been allocated, whether it's testing at 22%, education at 12%, state operations at 11%, with a description on fully on use. There have been a number of questions on COVID dollars received by the agencies to help with their operations or programs. So we gave you a breakdown by agency and for what purpose the dollars were requested and approved. You'll see that in your package as well. And then there are dollars that came from the feds and went straight to a member agency. For example, education funds might have gone straight to the Department of Education. We did complete a 46-page report that details each of these funding streams, to which agency the funds went to. In some cases, they might have gone directly to a municipality, and the status of those dollars being distributed. So that would be the overview of question number one. Question number two was pertaining to the disparity study. The committee was looking for information about what the study will focus on, how it would be funded, and the timeline for completion. The disparity study will be focused on evaluating our state's supplier diversity program, also referred to as our state set-aside program for small contractors and minority business enterprises. The goal is to look at whether there's a disparity between the availability of contractors that meet these definitions in the market, and then those who have the capacity to perform the work. So who's available and who actually has the capacity to perform the work. And then the study would look at to what extent are the local contractors that can perform the work actually getting the bids that are actually being selected. And so the phasing or the scope would first be to focus on construction. There's been a lot of discussion about the extent to which contractors are actually being selected for projects. Two, just looking broadly at all state agency goods and services contracts that would include IT or facility related services, so cleaning contracts, for example. Third would be our health and human services contracts, including personal services agreements. And fourth would be the quasi-public agency contracts. DAS, who you'll have a chance to talk with, I believe, shortly after OPM. OPM has requested that they issue an RFP for all 4 phases, and we'll figure out, we'll obviously learn what the cost of that is, but the administration is making a commitment to identifying some funding to carry forward to at least address the initial phases. We'll know when the RFP is concluded how much it will cost to complete the entire project. Question number 3 was pertaining to the aid to distressed municipalities. The budget does have a line item of $1.5 million within the Office of Policy and Management. In fiscal 20 and 21, the amount was supplemented by $7 million in bonding, and the committee wanted confirmation that the budget continues that commitment in bonding. And the answer is yes, $7 million is included in the governor's bond bill, and you'll see that in SB 887. Question number 4 was pertaining to the HR portion of the centralization. inquiring about the positions that have been consolidated within DAS. There are a total of 234 positions. The dollar value of those salaries is just about $19 million. And we provided you with a breakdown of the positions that came out of the agencies and went into DAS to perform the services. Question number 5 was pertaining to pilot funding within OPM's budget. First request was a breakdown town by town of the state property pilot and college and hospital pilots. We provided that for your review. In addition, there was a question about payments being eliminated under the college and hospital pilot. There were some reductions for certain towns, specifically a question pertaining to Mansfield was losing $7,583. The answer on the Mansfield question was that Mansfield and their annual report on tax exempt property that they provide to OPM and our intergovernmental policy division, they reported that they do not have any eligible tax exempt property, and they did not make a claim for reimbursement. So when the payment lists were established, several municipalities were provided payments, and they've recently reported that they do not have eligible properties. That was the question pertaining to pilot. As we move on to question number 6, as you know, the HR and Labor Relations Centralization, you have the 200 plus positions that went into DAS for the human resources portion of the program, and then the positions pertaining to labor relations are now would be reflected in the Office of Policy and Management under the leadership of Undersecretary Faye Brown-Bruton. There are a total of 58 positions that have been consolidated within OPM. They are organized by pod to leverage some of the similarities in agencies. So we do have a general government pod that addresses DAS, motor vehicles, revenue services, DSS, for example, a healthcare pod, 26 representatives there, DCF, DDS, DMS, and then there's a law enforcement pod, which focuses on corrections, DESP, and DEEP, and for a total of 58 positions and $5.4 million. As a part of the question on positions, you had inquired about our total position count, filled positions, and vacant positions as of 2018, 19, 20, and 21. And we provided you with the A chart, so you can see the number of vacancies and filled positions. You asked, of our vacant positions, how many does the agency anticipate filling next year? And we gave you a table under this question, basically to walk us through our current authorized count. So in fiscal year 21, OPM has 127 authorized positions across all funds. We have positions in the general fund, insurance fund, and also in the transportation fund. And we currently have, as reflected in the governor's budget, 5 new positions that are proposed for your consideration. 2 are for broadband, 2 related to cannabis, and 1 in the criminal justice division. In addition, the governor's budget recommends folding in the 58 labor relations positions. That would bring us to an authorized count of 190 positions. So going from 127 to 190. You asked about the anticipated number of positions that would be filled as of June 30th, 22. We anticipate 163 positions to be filled. There are 3 positions that are held for individuals that are in appointed positions that have to have a position to go to if they were not to continue to stay in that role. And then within our authorized count, we have about 23 unfunded positions. So the 190 or the 127 it's overstated. And then we are in the process of either have filled or are filling a number of vacancies. We have had some turnover in our budget division, in our finance division. We have just filled an undersecretary of Health and Human Services, a couple of positions in labor relations. And so those some of those positions are filled and the folks either on board or have offers out. And then there are a number of recruitments that are underway. With respect to question number 7 on project longevity, The question was whether there are other violence intervention funding that's available to the state besides Project Longevity. OPM doesn't administer any other funds for violence intervention. The judicial branch does administer a program to reduce gun violence among young people. We provided some information on that Youth Violence Initiative program for your review as well. Question number 8 was pertaining to quasi-public agencies. The request was to provide a list of quasis that receive funding from the general fund, the transportation fund, or other sources along with the history. And so we have 3 quasis that receive an annual appropriation. First, within DCD, the Capital Region Development Authority has an appropriation of about $6.3 million to help subsidize operations. You'll recall from our monthly comptroller's letters, due to the restrictions on the number of individuals that can attend programs, their deficit is much larger. They have not been able to have many events, but we do carry an annual appropriation for them. We also have a recommended appropriation in the governor's budget for MRDA, the Municipal Regional Development Authority, which was established in the last biennial budget to provide an economic development planning quasi-agency broader than the capital region. And so there is a recommendation for a $100,000 line item to support that board, which would be established within the next year. And finally, the Port Authority does have a $400,000 appropriation within the Department of Transportation, and that is budgeted in the Transportation Fund. Question number 9 was pertaining to the Elderly Renters Tax Relief Program. And the question was there any funding carried forward in fiscal year 21 with the intent to make payments in fiscal year 22? And no, we have not proposed any carry forwards for the program. We funded it based on expectations in fiscal year 22. Question number 10 was pertaining to the reserve for salary adjustment account. According to the RSA allocation in the proposed budget, there seems to be an attempt to plan for upcoming retirements. Please clarify. We do include in the RSA account, we are assuming about $19 million in fiscal 22 and $22 million in fiscal year 23 for accrual payouts. The Special Transportation Fund also has an RSA account, and that account includes $1.5 million in fiscal 22 and $1.7 million in fiscal 23 for accruals. We also have the standard back of the act language for the governor's budget that allows unexpended RSA funds to be carried forward to assist with any uptick in accrual payouts. We typically have the departments absorb those accruals, and then if they can't cover them, then we transfer from RSA. Question number 11 was pertaining to a bills that are proposing to institute a statewide property tax and whether or not OPM has any cost associated with those particular bills. First, SB 171, an act establishing a statewide tax on real property, and SB 172, an act concerning establishing a statewide assessment to encourage affordable housing. Those are bills that currently exist. The language is at this point not sufficient to determine how those mill rates would be administered, the taxes collected, or where the revenue will land. So we don't have a fiscal note at this time. We'll need more information on how the statewide property tax would be administered to determine the cost impact to OPM. Question number 12 was pertaining to union contracts. First question being how many are currently being negotiated that will impact fiscal 22 and 23. The vast majority of our contracts are open. They expire June 30th, 2021. We provided you with a full list. Undersecretary Brown-Brute and her team are currently in active negotiations. In terms of what will be submitted to the General Assembly this session, the only 2 that we are aware of will be the Yukon Postdoc Fellows Agreement and the A&R agreement that Undersecretary Brown-Brute recently testified on, that was pertaining to former managers that had accreted into the unit. And so we're in current negotiations. We do not believe that the remaining contracts will be completed in time, requiring General Assembly action. but of course, we'll keep you updated. There are some judicial agreements that are subject to wage reopeners, but at this point, the branch was not certain as to whether or not those agreements would be submitted during the current session. And finally, we have provided you with an update on some of the procurement reforms that have been instituted here in OPM. Since the administration has come in, we've really taken a hard look at some of the procurement responsibilities of the Office of Policy and Management. First, starting with in August of 2019, just a communication to our commissioners and our agency heads regarding heightened expectations on competitive procurement requirements and utilizing outcome-based reporting. We have revamped all of our reporting systems to ensure that we're tracking our procurement data more accurately. We are increasing procurement transparency. We provide a lot of support to agencies during the COVID-19 crisis to support their procurement needs and supporting them in bolstering their results-driven competitive procurements. Our team actually just presented to the Contract Standards Boards today, and Chairman Fox has praised the administration and the team on the progress that we've made to increase competitive bidding as well as transparency. So with that, we have included a thorough presentation, the same one that was provided to the Contract Standards Board in case you're interested. And with that, that summarizes the questions that you had formally proposed, and happy to provide any clarification or address anything else within the agency.
Well, thank you for clarifying and giving us more of a breakdown and detail of those questions. I would like to open it up for committee members if they wanted to some more clarification. I ask that you limit it to 2 questions, and then we'll see if we can circle around. We have about 30 minutes, 35 more minutes of the session. So before we start doing that, I have some questions for you. When you talk about the disparity study, do you have any numbers of how many contractors that, or the breakdown of different contractors with goods and services and constructions that you have currently seeking contracts?
Representative Baker, that would probably be a good question for the Department of Administrative Services. They can certainly report out to you the number of minority business enterprises that either currently have an existing master contract, or looking back historically over the past year or two, how many have actually been in services with the state of Connecticut. So Commissioner Jabal will be able to support you with that data.
Okay, I'll pass that on to you. When you talked about the distressed municipalities, the age, you talked about how it was in Mainfield, how they has stated that they did not have any, they didn't need any kind of funding because they didn't have any state-owned property. How do you go about seeking out and reaching out to the municipalities to see if they need any breaks or adjustments on their state property?
So with respect to Mansfield, there's an annual process where municipalities submit their list of tax exempt property. And so we had Manchester, Vernon, Trumbull, Mansfield, and New Canaan who either reported no property, or in the case of Manchester and Vernon, they actually sold tax exempt property, hospital property, and it now is for profit, which means the municipality is going to be able to tax it, and they're going to receive those additional property tax revenues. So that is our annual process. When we develop the governor's budget, obviously we have a statutory formula. We evaluate whether we can, afford to fully fund it. As far as whether we seek out whether municipalities need additional funding, wearing my former municipal CFO hat, typically the answer is yes. We do stay in contact with the CCM to hear concerns or needs from the member municipalities. As you probably will recall, we did provide a lot of support through CRF. I mean, but the reality is that the municipalities that have a heavy tax exempt burden, their costs are going up 2 to 3%, just like our very own, our cost. And when they don't see a muni aid increase, it certainly is hard for them to figure out how they're going to cover their own expenses. We don't directly seek that information out, but we do regularly meet with CCM to hear what the needs are on the ground.
Okay.
Same for cost. Some of the smaller towns, so between the larger municipalities and the smaller towns, we stay engaged with both of those groups.
Thank you for that answer. Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, but I just put my hand up, so I don't know if you wanted to go to Representative Dathan and Representative Walker. I don't want to stand in their way. They were up there first. Your choice.
Well, thank you. I just want to acknowledge my okay. Representative Dathan.
Oh, thank you.
Followed by Representative Walker.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your very thorough explanations. I feel like you were an auditor, which stings to my heart because that was how I started off my career. So very helpful. I was just a bit confused on the cannabis fiscal note, and maybe I'm looking at the wrong one, but I have something here that has, it looks like 3 hires under PS, but the information we were provided for just has 2. And the total amount is about, not unreasonable looking at the total amount, but it's just the number of heads. And just wanted to clarify.
Yes, Representative Dathan, thank you for the question. There's actually 1.66 positions. It's 1 staff attorney and a durational project manager. There are some funds for a consultant to support the equity analysis to ensure that those that have been underrepresented or have been burdened, if you will, by the war on drugs, that they also have an opportunity to have a place in this new business. And so we do anticipate using the Institute for Regional Policy to support us. And so there's a consultant cost for that one time in the first year, but there are only 2 positions, one of them durational in nature.
Okay, so the one-time cost for kind of equity that you're talking about, it's not going to be continuously evaluated. I mean, I think if we want to really address equity, it's not a one-shot thing. And I would just love to hear how we think we can do it just one time versus we need to be thinking about it. And, I'm sure you've looked at other states and what they're doing to ensure that, but just trying to get a little bit better of an idea.
Absolutely. Well, we certainly think that the year 1 is to conduct the initial equity assessment, and then year 2 would be to implement. And then I would expect that in a future biennium, the extent to which we want to go back and reevaluate and determine whether or not we achieved an equitable outcome, what percentage of the industry actually has, minority business enterprises, et cetera. We will want to go back and make sure that our intentions actually came to fruition. But as far as the cost for the biennium, we believe that year 1 is where we'll see the consultant cost, and year 2 unlikely to occur. If we believe there's a need for IRP or any other entity to support us, then we would use the midterm budget process to request through the legislature and the Appropriation Committee additional funds.
Okay, thank you so much. My second question has to do with consultant contracts. Has the agency pulled together a schedule of all consulting contracts that we have, the terms on those contracts, so we have an idea long-term what our commitments are that we have with each of these, and when the deliverables we would expect? Sorry that this didn't come in the first round of questions, but something I've thought of as we've been talking to other agencies.
Yes.
So if you could provide that, that would be great. And thank you so much for your presentation. Enjoy your weekend. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Happy to do so.
Representative Daisy. Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Secretary. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you. So I'm going through and I apologize. For some reason, printing out all your stuff was my computer didn't want to do it for a long time. So it took me a little bit of time. So I'm not caught up to speed, but on your question 8, you had that there were 3 quasi-public agencies that received annual appropriations. And then on the questions that we had back in February from 2/16, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 quasi public agencies, and this is specifically about quasi-public agencies are state employees, all in talking about the state employees that are in the quasi agencies. So I'm confused. The statement that the question that you have here is just about who funds them, receive funds from the general fund.
The question that that the committee had proposed were the list of quasis that receive funding from the general fund or the special transportation fund.
Okay.
You also asked about other resources, and there are quasis that receive. If we were going to go into bond funds, then the list would certainly be more expansive. And we could certainly go back and take a look. We focused on the general fund and the appropriated funds.
Okay, that makes more sense because there were a lot more listed in the other one, but when you said bond funds, then I saw Green Bank and those others. And those are
absolutely
okay. And in our discussions with Department of Corrections, they talked about, and I forgot the name of the report that we're getting, a Connecticut something. It's about savings.
Connecticut Creates report. Yes.
Yeah, Connecticut Creates. Okay, so I need to understand. You know what I'm going to ask. Okay, so how does the savings from DOC get into OPM under Connecticut Creates?
So Representative, we could use the holdback process, for example, or just have the agency lapse the dollars. Those savings are going to pretty much be in PS and OE, and then there'll be some fringe savings in the comptroller's account. We propose the budget with a bottom line lapse, just like we do for our unallocated lapses or our hiring savings. And then we would just, through our monthly reporting process, the agency will show lapses in PS and OE as a result. So obviously the Creates project has, we have $20 million in year 1 and $115 million in year 2. Hopefully by year 2, we can actually put the savings specifically in the agencies. But for year 1, it's a small goal of $20 million, and we'll just have the agency lapse the dollars and account for it that way.
So when we looked at the number of employees versus the amount of money that went into overtime, and then the population of inmates, it seems like the population's going down. The overtime is going up, and the number of employees is going down. So are we costing ourselves money in this circumstance and sort of forcing the savings? I looked at it, and maybe I want to look at the overtime that we have for this year and what the projected numbers, but we don't seem to have a balance in their operational dollars. Have you looked at that?
We have. I mean, the savings as proposed are real. It's the full-time salaries of the folks that, individuals that will naturally retire, that we will not have to backfill. And we've looked at the overtime costs in those particular units that would now be moved. And so there's a comprehensive analysis to support that. I think when you just look at overtime, there's a mixed bag there. I mean, obviously we had a really tough year with the pandemic, and some of that is baked into the overtime results as well. But happy to share with you the backup as to how we came to our number, how we came to the numbers for the savings that are assumed in the budget. We do believe that they're real. There's always a sweet spot, obviously, between full-time positions versus overtime and the extent to which any of that includes the health services units. So we can certainly break that down further, but the savings as we've provided, they're conservative. We believe they will actually be achieved, and we'll follow up with some additional detail for you.
The logic right there in front, it didn't pan out. But I mean, the other concern that I have, which makes it kind of a perfect storm, is the fact that we've got a healthcare system that we haven't figured out how we're going to manage, because we have a lot of shortfalls in positions, and I'm sure the overtime in that population is extremely high because of everything. So, and when we talked to the director for the healthcare system, one of the things was they were having a hard time filling those positions. So I think maybe we're going to have to look at how much we are actually offering for those positions in those circumstances. And we're going to have to maybe consider some of that savings having to be shifted over to inmate medical to try and make it so that, I'm just afraid we're going to get another suit. And I mean, it concerns me in that regard that we need to reevaluate what we do. So I just wanted to put that on your radar. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're very welcome. And Representative Walker, Undersecretary Faye Brown-Bruton has spent some time on this issue on what else we can do to incentivize individuals in these roles. Obviously, it's a tough environment to work in. And when we hire, we might lose them to other agencies like DEMIS, and we'd be happy to have some offline conversations with you about some of those strategies.
Okay, great. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Walker. Senator Olson.
Thank you very much. And I wouldn't say the environment's that tough, but in the Department of Corrections, but you know, I might have a different perspective on it. Nonetheless, I think we should offer them more money to work there. I have two questions. One relative to the RSA account. What is the normal amount that was put into the RSA? It seems to be low this year.
So it's a little, it will vary based on whether or not contracts are settled and whether or not they're settled in time for us to build the funding into the agency's budget. So you will see some fluctuation. In terms of the amount that was put in for this year, I do, Paul Potamianos, you're on the line. I don't know if you have that handy for the senator.
I have to check on that. I think part of the rationale for it perhaps looking lower is the assumption around the pattern for collective bargaining agreements.
But what if that pattern is not realized? I mean, in reality, shouldn't we budget for what we for what the normal pattern is, and then have it be a savings at the end of the year instead of have it be a deficit at the end of the year? Should we have to come back? Or are you planning on not settling the contracts for the next 2 years? What's the goal?
We are planning to be aggressive with achieving another labor contract with all of our bargaining units. The time frame of how long that will take cannot be determined. Faye is working and her team are flat out with that process. There are a lot of contracts at one time to be negotiated, so it will take some time. I believe we will have an opportunity to come back. One, we have the carry forward. We have RSA funding that will be carried forward if you approve. So if the contracts become settled and we need to cover those wages, then the carry forward will sustain us through fiscal 22. We'll use the midterm budget process to build any further settlement on wages. We also have to recognize that and this is outside the purview of this committee, but to answer your question, I have to go there. We will continue to monitor revenues. We've been outperforming some of our assumptions and regaining lost revenues. That will also be a tool for us to fund increases if they get negotiated. And so it'll allow us to negotiate at the same time while evaluating our rebound from an economic perspective. So I'm not concerned that we cannot make the adjustment or won't have the capacity to do so. It can be done both ways, Senator. Sometimes you build it in and you see what happens in negotiations. Other times you leave it out. We're in unique circumstances right now, I think, coming out of the COVID, economic downturn. And I think this is the best path for us at this time.
And if I could add, Secretary, to the question about how much is built in for RSA, we are anticipating at this point spending just shy of $26 million in fiscal year 21 out of the RSA account, and have requested resources across both general fund and transportation, a total of 63.4 million in 22 and 123.4 million in FY23.
That you would have to that, you're counting on the 62 million that's left in the RSA account right now. Is that what you're counting on? Adding in 19 million, which would bring us up to 82 million, and then adding in money from the second year. Is that what you're calling on?
Well, to the extent that there are unexpended funds in RSA this year, yes, that would be added to the requested appropriations for general fund and transportation fund for 22 and 23.
Right. So on top of the appropriations, there's the carry forward. So we have pretty good capacity there.
Correct. But if you're looking at the number of people that may retire, that money, the payouts on vacation, holidays, and sick time, how much would, if you had everybody retire, do you have an idea how much would be paid out of that RSA account? If you had 100% of the people that were able to retire, how much would be paid out? If you had 50% of the people that would retire, how much would be paid out? So that is the, that's something that can you get those numbers to us? Is that a possibility?
Sure. We can certainly look back at other time points where we had similar levels of retirement, or take a look at the accrued balances and provide an estimate of what that could potentially be. We'll do that in our follow-up.
Thank you. And then on the carry forwards, does that in any way jeopardize what we have under the spending cap?
No.
Left as a buffer?
No.
Okay. And lastly, could you go over how many people did we move again into phase unit into?
58 positions, Senator.
Okay. Thank you very much. I may have a couple of more questions, but I cede I've gone already one above my 2 allotted.
Very good, Senator.
Well, Senator, nobody else has their hand raised.
Yeah, I
so
do.
You have the floor. Oh, you just raised your hand.
I did. Yeah, thank you. I always wait till the end, but thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I have some very, very brief questions. And thank you, Secretary, for the excellent comprehensive report that we received. But I am concerned about the disparity study, and could you just give us a little more information about when do you expect the RFP to go out, so we have a better understanding of what type of funding we're going to need in the budget for such a study? That would be number one. And then I believe it was question 8 that yearly the $400,000 goes out to the Port Authority. And do we have any sense of how that $400,000 is used in that breakout? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative McCarty. So the DEAS is in the process of crafting the RFP. They understand the time sensitivity. I suspect that the RFP will probably go out within the next 30 days. It's usually out for 4 to 6 weeks and then gets scored. I could see us being, in the next 2 months or thereabouts, 2 to 2.5 months, actually having the amount. What I would propose that we do is we utilize a carry forward, since it is a one-time expense, to identify, $1 million or, somewhere in that neighborhood, to carry forward the dollars. And then obviously if it's run short, then we can work on how to address that in the middle of the year. but it probably will take about a 2-month process for them to write it, to post it, to score, and to select an actual respondent. So we're going to have to guesstimate, and then we'll have to adjust. And if the funding's not adequate, we can phase it. We can do phase 1 and phase 2, and then we can find additional funds for the remaining phases. They are writing the RFP with those phases to ensure that we can complete this over time if necessary. So the OPM will work with the legislature to identify an area for carry forward for consideration. The second question was pertaining to the CPA, the 400,000. There are positions that are funded within DOT, but they are 100% dedicated and work at the CPA. We can certainly follow up and give you a list of those positions. Primarily the dollars are position support.
Okay, thank you for those responses. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative McCarty. Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I want to go back to the managers. Well, there are approximately about 1,300 managers across the state. But they're not necessarily all managers. Are those confidential employees and human resources types of employees? Would that be fair?
Senator Austin, so we have managers and then we have other non-union employees. They could be in the EX plan. They could be confidential secretaries, correct? Undersecretary Brown-Bruton, you would be able to confirm the specific number. You're on mute, ma'am.
That number is for the managers. There's a separate line for confidentials and execs. So that is the manager number. Those in managerial classifications, the 1,200, approximately 1,200.
How many, Faye, how many are in the other classifications of confidential and execs?
I can get you that number and give you a breakout of all those.
That would be great. And those people would not be eligible. The 1,300 number are those that are eligible to accrete into a bargaining unit. Just want to know how many times we're going to come for an accretion, Faye.
Oh, okay, so based upon the statutory definition of manager.
Yes.
Confidentials would not be able to accrete into a bargaining unit because statutorily they're excluded. And of that 1,200 to 1,300 who are in managerial classifications right now, if they could not meet the statutory definition, then all of them. But I don't see that as being the case.
What is your estimate? How many of them do you think are eligible to accrete into a bargaining unit of those 12 or 1,300?
Because it is based upon the specific duties performed by the individual. Yep. And whether or not they can meet 2 of the 4 criteria in the statute. I just couldn't say sitting here because I don't know what all those people are doing.
So I would think that maybe about 50% could accrete into a bargaining unit. What is the plan to address the compression issues relative to the folks that are currently identified as managerial? Is there a plan?
So first,
I would defer to the secretary on that because I know that is being discussed mightily.
So that's the first question, Senator. I hear you saying that's your guess, and I hear Undersecretary Brown-Bruton saying she can't tell you if that's 50%, but the plan.
She's only saying that because she doesn't want to put out there that these people could accrete. And I'm just saying that.
I just want to make sure Faye's on the record response was clearly noted.
I clearly noted Faye's response, Madam Secretary.
We're going to, on the second, because she's very clear. But anyhow, on the second question, you will see in the CREATES report a recommendation surrounding salary inequities. Commissioner Jabal and I are just beginning to think about what's the most comprehensive way to go at this issue. recognizing we're going to have positions become vacant with all these retirements. We'll likely have the opportunity to refill positions at a lower level, but therein lies some opportunity to address situations where a manager is earning less than their union employees reporting in. So we're still thinking about whether do we need to do a comprehensive study, or do we kind of take this agency by agency as we are, commissioners are thinking about how to deal with the number of vacancies that are going to happen, and on a case by case basis, as agencies find gross inequities, they are raising them to OPM, and we're slowly addressing them. So we're not ignoring the issue right now. If the commissioner raises it, we will address it. But I think our real opportunity is when we have this significant loss of employees in the departments, and a lot of them are in managerial functions, whether they are union managerial or non-union managerial. There will be dollars that they can bring in a manager at a higher level or promote up to a higher level. We haven't decided whether we need to do a full study. Those studies take like 6 to 9 months. People are starting to retire now. We should be addressing it as folks are exiting. You will see Commissioner Jamal after this, and he'll go into further details. Those things typically will fall under jointly between OPM and DAS, but the dollars to fund it, I think the great opportunity is the fact that folks are attriting, and we should fix it at that time. Did I see a hand up, Faye? Go ahead.
Yeah. Their number of managers, as I said, that 1,300, approximately 1,300 is just managers. Confidentials, 448. Let's see, we've got other non-bargaining unit, 230. And exempt, elected, and appointed, 270.
Thank you for that, Faye. I appreciate that. And back to you, Madam Secretary. It seems to me that there, in talking with every agency, there seems to be an extraordinary number of vacancies this year that are dollars that have been put in the budget for those positions. I'm curious, why do we have so many vacancies this year? Is this something that was done for budgetary reasons? Is this something that was done because the positions were unnecessary because of COVID? Or is there something else going on that we're not yet seeing?
Senator, couple things I would note. First, when the legislature passed a budget, they passed a budget with hiring savings at the bottom of the budget. And so we do start the year looking at agencies that are carrying excess positions. We look historically at the number of positions they would have funded, and we apply hiring savings holdbacks consistent with the budget that you approved. That's number one. Number two, we also have bottom line unallocated lapses, and we are very cautious on applying those lapses to programs. They're programs that when you see the holdbacks applied to, you typically do not like that. And so we, in respect for the legislature, try to protect programs. We ask agencies where they believe it's achievable to hold on some positions so that you don't see holdbacks applied to earmarks and other programs that are important to you. Number three, at one point in the year, we were projecting a deficit. We had to put forth a deficit mitigation plan. Given that we are in the middle of a COVID pandemic, we did not want to harm programs that people are relying on. Most of the programs were all things that were important, housing programs, food programs, workforce development. We could not see ourselves applying holdbacks in areas where people need jobs and they need to be upskilled. So we did implement not a hiring freeze, but restricted hiring, and agencies where they felt it was critical, where they felt the refill was critical, would still submit the position, and if it was necessary, we approved positions. We've eased up because we have now flipped to surplus, so you're starting to see more position approvals flowing through the system. But at the end of the day, any commissioner that has a dire need and feels that their mission is being compromised, or there's an area where they absolutely have to have the positions to address it, they have a direct line to me, and we respect the knowledge of their agency, and we support them. Those are some of the major factors. DOT is an area where we just approved, I don't know, over 100 positions recently. They're trying to get ready for the infrastructure bill and projects. They need a lot with engineers. We also are observing where the CREATES report says there are risks in certain types of positions. We're having the forethought of filling positions in advance before they retire. So those are some of the reasons you're hearing of vacancies, but by and large, agencies are indicating that they're still doing well. Our health and human service agencies, for example, in DDS and DMIS, as fast as we approve, the position's a trick. So it looks like they're carrying a lot of vacancies, but they're getting approvals. It's just that, we can't hold on to folks, or people are retiring at a faster rate. So it's a mixed bag, but certainly we've eased up on hiring and we support the agencies as they need.
So to be clear, the agencies were not complaining.
No.
It was an observation.
Mhm.
I don't want you to
Okay.
think that the agencies were complaining. There wasn't a
Sure.
commissioner saying, hey, listen, I have 10 positions. I've been
Sure.
trying to get it for 12 months and nobody's listening to me. That's not the case. I was curious because I counted over 2,000 openings over the last number of weeks in regards to different agencies reporting to us. And I was curious what we were doing with that many vacancies, because if we do see the number of people leaving that we anticipate leaving, I don't want to start in the hole and try to dig out of that hole with the number of very important programs that are in every single agency that needs staff. So that's something that I'm curious about. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Senator, sometimes we have to be cautious about agencies reporting vacancies that are not funded. Authorized counts in some agencies
Correct.
are overstated to give them flexibility, but certainly sensitive to your concern.
Thank you.
All right, we're running out of time. We want to just Representative Dayton, we have one last question.
One last question, sorry. I didn't ask this last time, but about the broadband consultants, what was the decision to hire two heads for, it seems like a pretty technical position about developing a statewide broadband map. And I'm wondering if it would be, why there was made the decision to hire rather than necessarily try to work with consultants who might be able to have that expertise rather than hire it.
So thank you for the question, Representative Dathan. OPM's role, first of all, you're probably aware that we do have a data and policy analytics unit. We're required by statute to have a chief data officer, Mr. Scott Gall. He is here on the line today. And within our municipal division, we currently do a lot with GIS mapping currently. The two positions that we are looking to have supported would be a policy development coordinator and a planning or research analyst. If OPM is going to be statutorily charged with leading on the data collection and planning effort, we're going to have staff in-house that will actually bring together the broadband providers, the consumers to the table to help identify what methodology we're going to use to collect the data points. States have done this differently, and we're going to need to coordinate with DEEP, and the cost for a consultant to do this are very large. I do have Scott Gall, who could probably give you a little bit more detail. Scott, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about the process and how it's been done in other states with staffing and consultants, because there are a number of different models. Scott?
Yeah, I'll cover briefly because I know we're running late. So I think to one of the points that came up earlier, this is something that we anticipate is going to be an ongoing effort. And so that's a reason for looking at staffing rather than consultants so that we can maintain and sustain it. I think the way that we're planning on, I should say first, there's a planning process that's in the proposed broadband legislation that would fully specify how we're undertaking the mapping, but based on what we've seen in other states, it could be a fairly labor-intensive process that involves collecting data both from internet service providers and sort of collecting data from the consumer side, from businesses, residents, and so on. And so I think the level of effort to develop the standards for data collection and to manage that on an ongoing basis, to sustain that over time, and to develop a way that that's presented transparently and accurately to the public so that people have a good sense of where there is and is not broadband access. So our estimate was that the two staff would be able to help us get to the 2027 timeline that's in the legislation. But the planning process will sort of fully help us make that decision.
But the key thing is this is not a static process. It keeps going. It changes over time. So that makes sense. And thank you for that explanation. I know not material, but I was wondering. Thanks a lot, Madam Commissioner, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Madam Secretary, the only other, when is that report coming out for, was it Connecticut or Connecticut Creates or whatever that?
It is imminent, no later than 2 weeks, likely sooner than that.
Okay, all right, and that is taking. They've been doing this since the summer, right? Correct.
That is correct. They're round the clock, quite frankly. Commissioner Jabal and I have been supervising, as well as Undersecretary Mike Walsh in OPM. We met with the consultant team weekly or sometimes more frequently, and we had OPM involvement in every meeting. So including the Undersecretary, as well as our budget division, our policy folks. So that will be coming out, and then we will be happy to present some of those findings in greater detail to you.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Walker. Commissioner, I had a question before we end the session. UConn 2000, part of their program, do you monitor, does your office monitor their construction minority contracting things? Would that be part of your the disparity study, or how would?
So OPM does not monitor UConn's construction program and evaluating the extent to which they use minority business enterprises. Commissioner Jabal and his team are on the line, and so I think you might want to pose the question. Deputy Diamantis, you also were involved in the Division of Construction Services, and you might be able to weigh in the extent to which there's any involvement and how they select those contractors.
Actually, DAS or OPM is not involved in the UConn. They are very much independent of us, of the two agencies, and they have their own ability to hire. Of course, they need to follow statutory guidelines, but they are under their own domain.
So the question would be, as I would have to address that to UConn directly.
That is correct, Representative.
Okay. Thank you.
And Representative, we might want to take a look at make sure that the disparity study is comprehensive in evaluating the extent to which MBEs have also been able to access UConn projects. So thank you for raising it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate you and your team, Commissioner, for coming out today on this beautiful Friday afternoon. I don't see any more hands raised, so we're going to end this portion. Any questions from our committee members, we'll submit them to you. And thank you and enjoy the weekend.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, the team from DAS is here, and Eleanor Michael is going to lead off for the agency.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eleanor Michael, and I'm the Policy and Legislative Advisor at the Department of Administrative Services. Thank you so much for having us here today. Unfortunately, Commissioner Jabal had a personal matter come up last minute, so he is running approximately 10 minutes late today. However, he will be joining us shortly, and I'm happy to make introductions and to get the session kicked off on behalf of the DAS team.
Friday afternoon. I know there was some questions I wish to apply to you. And I know if you wanted to maybe go down the list and do a response.
Yes, absolutely. I'm happy to do that. And just before I get started, I'd just like to introduce the members of the team that I have with me here today, if that's all right.
Yes, I apologize.
Not a problem. It's getting late in the day.
Yeah, I know. And I'm looking at that sun out there. I want to get out there and enjoy it like I did Senator Austin.
Understood. Well, thank you so much for your time. We truly appreciate it. So here with us today, like I said, we will have Commissioner Jabal in approximately 10 minutes. We also have our 3 deputy commissioners here with us today. Mark Raymond, who is our Deputy Commissioner and Chief Information Officer. Nick Herms, who is our Deputy Commissioner for Human Resources. Noel Petra, our Deputy Commissioner for Real Estate and Construction. As well as Chantel Vars, who is our Acting Director of Business Services. Carol Wilson, our Director of Procurement. Doug Moore, who is the Director of Property and Facilities Management, Shane Mallory, our Administrator of Statewide Leasing and Property Transfers, as well as Bob Jadida, our Directors of Workers' Compensation. So without further ado, should I go ahead with the questions, Representative?
Yes, you can, and then the Commissioner, he can jump.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to flag at the outset, I know perhaps Susan Keene also flagged it for you. We were having some technical difficulties getting some of our attachments transferred over to the committee. So if you were unable to receive any of the attachments, please let us know. We will work to get those to you after the meeting today.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So just going straight through the list of questions that we received from OFA on behalf of the committee. The first question was, how many positions do we have that are filled and vacant? From our current general fund positions, we have 465.5 filled positions and 113.5 positions that are vacant. The next question was, how many positions came over to DAS for the human resources transfer, and how many of those positions are vacant? For the human resources transfer, we had 227 positions come over to DAS, and of those positions, 23 are currently vacant. The next related question was whether those positions are currently found on the DAS payroll. And the answer to that is currently all the positions have been transferred in Core CT to DAS with a direct charge to agency's PS budget allotments. We were requested whether we could provide an org chart for those transfers, and we did provide that. Again, hopefully you received it, but if you did not, please let us know. We'd be happy to attempt to send that again. Question number 2 related to how many buildings does DAS own? Our DAS facilities management team manages 35 buildings, which is about 10% of the state's total portfolio of real estate. The buildings that DAS owns and operates are mainly the office buildings you're familiar with in and around the state capitol. We do not operate or own buildings at UConn, the state colleges and universities, at DOT, or at DOC. Along the same lines, question number 3 was, how many buildings does DAS lease? As of June 30th of 2020, DAS has 119 leases, which is down. We have about 1,864,860 square feet of property, which is down 14% from last year. And we have 108 lease outs in which we are the landlord. We did also send over a spreadsheet that contains our current DAS lease inventory for your reference. Again, just wanted to emphasize here as well that while DAS is responsible for the real estate of most agencies and the judicial branch, we are not responsible for the real estate of UConn, DOT, or DOL. The question number 4 is whether DAS is planning to roll out an initiative to provide LED lighting in each of these facilities. DAS will continue to implement LED lighting and other building-related energy efficiency improvements at our state buildings, provided we have a positive cost-benefit analysis of the improvements and that funding is in place to make those improvements. Currently, this work has been done on a case-by-case basis. And it might be of interest that recently DAS Construction Services, in conjunction with OPM, conducted an energy audit of a number of state buildings, including DAS buildings. And we are currently evaluating this audit to prioritize new energy improvements at each of our buildings. We're also embarking on a public-private partnership with the Green Bank to install solar panels on the roof of the state office building immediately across from the state capitol. This agreement is currently at the AG's office for approval. And the last question that we received was in regards to state employee worker compensation claims. We got a number of questions regarding numbers, and it was our understanding from the prior hearing that the crux of the questions was about COVID-related claims. So I'll just run through those numbers really quickly. And then I see that Commissioner Jabal has joined us here, so I'll turn the microphone over to him at that point.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Commissioner. Thank you for joining us. So you have the floor.
My sincere apologies for running a little late here, but thank you, Eleanor. Please keep going.
Absolutely. So in terms of total COVID-related workers' compensation claims, there have been 313. COVID-related claims that are record only are 272. COVID claims that have been accepted as compensable are 41. And COVID-related workers' compensation claims that have been denied are 95. And then finally, how many COVID-related claims have been paid, including on a without prejudice basis, and that number is 41. And then finally, there was a question about the COVID claims as compared to all other workers' compensation claims that we received in calendar year 2020. There were 3,468 total workers' compensation claims, of which 248 were COVID-related. And that concludes the responses to all of the questions that we received. Thank you so much.
For sharing those responses. I don't have any questions at this time, but Representative Dave, you have some questions?
I do. Thank you so much, Chairman Baker. And thank you, Eleanor, for going through the sheet, and welcome, Commissioner. Just wanted to understand, has the agency done a private property strategy with all of the leases that you have? The spreadsheet was really good and very thorough, but just wanted to understand if you all have been thinking a little bit longer term with your leases and buildings, and if you've developed any internal documents that may talk about that, so we can be thinking a little longer term about the property needs of the state.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Dathan. It's a great question, and a question that is very timely also as we look to exit this this COVID environment that we've been operating in for the last year. I'll touch on it briefly, and then if Deputy Commissioner Petra has anything he'd like to add. But just generally to answer your question, DAS and OPM are in constant collaboration looking at our real estate footprint across the state, both owned and leased space. Constantly looking at the needs of the agencies to fulfill their missions, looking at opportunities to save money, become more efficient where possible. And so you've seen we've undertaken a number of actions looking to consolidate some sites. We've recently vacated 1820 Trinity and 30 Trinity by moving those teams into the newly renovated state office building, some space we had there, as well as 55 Farmington, which is going to help us get those facilities hopefully sold and back on the city of Hartford's tax rolls and back into productive use. And Shane Mallory, who runs our leasing group, is constantly looking at our lease portfolio as well, and looking to make sure we're making the best use of taxpayer dollars at every turn and trying to consolidate, where we can. But I think the broader point you're steering us into is, how our needs may evolve going forward now. And that's a work in progress, right? I don't think anybody knows yet exactly what the post-COVID world is going to look like with regards to our needs for space, in the state. That's something Secretary McCaw and I and Deputy Commissioner Petra, Deputy Diamantis are going to be looking at, in the coming months.
Will the CREATES report touch on property at all, or is that just purely for retirement?
There is some content in there with regards to our physical footprint as well, and some opportunities that we see, some of which I think are beyond just office space as well. I think you're all aware of the opportunity to consolidate and close some of our prisons, for example. But just with regards to office space, it is something that is touched on in there. But it is a challenging time to be talking about that, because we still have more work to do. I think not just the state, but large employers generally, right? Understanding what the post-COVID world looks like and to what degree we're going back to the way it was versus, something that's maybe a little bit in between where we were and where we have been for the last year. So that's still very much an open question, I think.
Okay. And my second question has to do with consultant contracts. I asked OPM Commissioner Melissa McCaw a few minutes ago about a summary listing of all consulting contracts. Is there anything that your agency would have that she wouldn't be able to provide, or was I safe just asking her for consultants?
Well,
in other words, if there's more, could we get a schedule of those, just a term of those agreements, what the deliverables are, and
sure,
sort of maybe what we paid and what we still have left to do?
Yeah, well, Secretary McCaw and OPM, as you probably are aware, are responsible for the PSA and POS contracts. So I'm sure they can provide that. We do have contracts with regards to IT services that are run out of DAS. So that may be in addition to that list that we could certainly provide.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you so much, Commissioner. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representation. We have Senator Austin. Senator Austin, you have the floor.
Yes, it was taking me a long time to unmute. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. My computer doesn't want to talk outside.
That's quite all right.
Which is fine. I wanted to delve a little bit more into, Commissioner, what you were talking about with Representative Dathan relative to properties that may or may not return to the tax rolls in Hartford. If the properties don't have value because the climate has shifted from large buildings to more at-home work, has your agency sort of looked at that component of things? Because it seems to me that a lot of people will not be going back to large buildings with large number of staff.
Yeah, thank you, Senator, for the question. I think the approach is typically once we receive the various internal approvals to surplus a property, then eventually you get to the end of that journey and then you list it for sale, and we'll see what the market says, right? That you may very well be right. I know that some folks, particularly for those Trinity Street properties, including one of your colleagues in the Senate, have a view that maybe those properties would be better used for housing as opposed to commercial use. And they are, they're not high rises, right? I think they're 3 or 4 stories, and they could be, as they say in real estate, it's the location, location, location. You can't really beat the location of those properties. So I would imagine there hopefully would be some strong interest one way or the other. But like I said, the market will let us know, whether there's an interest or not.
And is there a bottom line that you would want to get on a property? Do you decide that we will take this and no less?
There's probably a correct statutory answer to that question, and maybe Shane or Noel, do you guys want to take that?
We generally look at all the bids that are offered, and we take the best value to the state. I don't know, and maybe Shane can jump in and tell me that there's a statutory requirement on that.
There is no statutory requirement. There is a policy that we have with OPM that we do appraise the properties, but we don't exclusively look at price that the state gets because we're looking for the property to get back on the tax rolls. So it's kind of various things that we look at, maybe the possible use and timing and whether there's financing that has to be gotten by the buyer. But so we look at a lot of variables besides price, but there's no statutory requirement, no.
Thank you very much. I'm curious, do you have a list of properties, and you might have already said this, that that you're looking to turn back onto the tax rolls? Shane, do you have that list?
Yes, we do have a DAS surplus property list that we could provide you. It's just a very few number of properties. Again, they're just DAS properties, not the entire state properties that would be provided through OPM.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Before I give Representative Walker, I have a question. Shane, when you talk about the properties that are being put back on the road, who assesses their values? Do you have independent realtors come in, appraisal people, or do you have within your DAS appraisers in that?
No, Representative, we do use independent outside appraisers, and depending on the estimated value of the property, we either get one appraisal or two appraisals, but they are independent, hired for each project, and they're the highest designation within the appraisal field, and we use those as the basis.
So, so would that be appraisers throughout in those particular areas throughout the state? Or is it just maybe just one? And then how do you go about selecting those individuals?
It is based on area, but we have a list of all the MAI appraisers in the state. And every time we have an assignment, we send out a email RFP to that group and ask them for their pricing and their timing to get the appraisal done and their expertise for that particular assignment. And then we make a decision on the one or two appraisals based on those responses back.
So how would an individual appraiser become part of that list?
Well, right now, I think it's around 30 or 40 appraisers that get that email each time we need an appraisal. And then obviously some of them don't respond or they don't feel like they have expertise for that particular property. And then again, we base it on how long it will take them to get the appraisal back to us and their pricing. And then we select from there.
Okay, thank you. Representative Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, Commissioner. How are you?
Good to see you.
I'm as tired as you are. I'm just gonna. I mean, this is my engine is so flat. It's pathetic. So
I like Senator Austin's approach, though. At least he's out in a little fresh air there. That's a good.
Maybe that's where I'm going to do that soon. It's just one kind of thought thing. When you talk about your leases, you said that the leases are down by 14%. But then when I go into your accounting, it says that the dollar amount of your leases are down by 56%. Am I missing something here? Or am I reading the wrong thing or something?
My guess is that could be a 55 Elm Street dynamic. Is that right, Shane?
Yeah, that's correct, Representative. 55 Elm Street was about 6 million of the 9 million that we saved last year. So the one lease was 200,000 square feet.
Okay, all right. I looked at it. I was just reading, and that was the only reason why I asked, because it didn't pan out. But have a better weekend. Have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. You have a good weekend as well.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, Representative McCarty.
Yes, and thank you, Commissioner, and your department for answering all of our questions. And I apologize if I didn't ask this in the original questions, but just caught my attention. If you look at the State Marshal Commission portal And if you look at that figure going out into 23, it doubles the amount. And just wondering if we could have some explanation as to why there's such a significant increase in that portal with that funding.
Chantel or Noel, or Doug, do you know the answer?
I can take it, Josh. So the State Marshal Commission has pretty much, I took over as operating the State Marshal Commission about 1.5 years ago, and one of the big things I'm trying to do is modernize it and bring it into 2021. And state marshals pay their annual fee by sending a check, and so now we're adding them into the portal for e-licensing so that they can pay online. So it's just a modernization process that didn't exist previously, Representative.
Okay,
and so there's a fee to Best or to I'm not sure where that we have to pay for having them on the state portal for e-licensing.
Okay, so it's basically just bringing it up to licensing and modernizing it?
Yes, e-licensing, not only will we be able to do the license for state marshal, we can also download complaints and other annual activities that we have to do on behalf of state marshals. They're entitled to get state health insurance. So we want to use the portal as a means of communicating with the marshals and explaining information to them, as well as getting information from them.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry that I didn't pose that earlier on, and I appreciate all of your responses today. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Now, in response to your information about modernizing the state marshals, are you going to require that there is more accountability in who they report to and stuff? And because I've gotten quite a few complaints about marshals and the stuff that the responses and being able to reach out to them, and they said they're not able to connect with a response, and they had to go maybe call a marshal that's like 2-3 towns over just to get some kind of services. Are you doing anything to kind of put some more accountability in with them?
Yes, Representative. We're working hard to try to. So part of the commission's responsibility is to provide oversight of a state marshal and ensuring that they're behaving in a manner that's consistent with a code of conduct. Since they're independent contractors, they are appointed by the state, but they basically work as independent contractors. They're hired separately. So the commission's responsibility is to review complaints that we receive and investigate those complaints, and then take action through the Uniform Procedures Act. And they have to have a fair hearing on issues, and the commission has the ability to suspend or revocate their license in order to perform their duties. So it is a big issue for the commission to ensure that happens, and we're trying more and more to do that every day. The modernization of the commission is high on my list of things that we want to do, from restraining order duty to the e-licensing, as well as different other methodologies. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make the commission better in enforcement. So and hopefully to eliminate those complaints and ensure. We also have an issue where a lot of our state marshals are, the legislature, when they created the State Marshal Commission, basically grandfathered a lot of marshals into the service. And there's been 3 classes of state marshals since that grandfathering date. So a lot of those marshals that were grandfathered, they're now in retirement. So it's really incumbent on the commission to try to get a new class of state marshals in that go through a very rigorous training process so that we get better individuals serving as marshals, so that we help to eliminate the issues that you described about inability to get marshals to be responsive in the communities in which people are looking for their services. So it's something that will take some time, but I hope that we get there. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not.
No, it does. It does. You're on point. So thank you. I appreciate for your response. Representative David.
I'm sorry. I just remembered one question I forgot earlier, and I'd asked my two. So, Commissioner, just wanted to chat about the workers' compensation claims. I know we moved a lot of workers' comp to DAS this year, and just trying to get an understanding. Because of the move, it's kind of hard to see, you know, how overall the big picture has changed. I'm going to ask probably OFA to kind of pull together a schedule of we have like for like, and so just to get a better understanding. But I just wanted to get an understanding. What kind of analytics do you all do when you're determining your workers' comp budgets going forward?
Sure. We have, I believe, our workers' comp program manager, Bob Gadita, on. Bob, do you want to take this?
Sure, Representative. Can you just repeat the question for me again? You're referring to the analytics to determine the appropriations and budgets for each of the 11 budgeted agencies?
Yes, and I understand that judicial is not been incorporated because they're a separate branch of government. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct, Representative. They were not also included in the, are you also referring to the HR centralization maybe as well? Because you
No, I'm talking strictly now about workers' compensation, but yes, and I did notice that for the HR centralization. But I know like DOC is been, and you know, DCF, and I think there was a few other, and I'm just looking at the schedule, and I've been trying to flip back to see overall on a, I hate to say I might come out of corporate, so I'm looking at a consolidated basis of all of our agencies to see if we're like for like. And you know, I think the OFA can help me with that. But my question more to you is, when we're developing budgets for workers' compensation, how do we do that? What sort of analytical tools do we use? Or is it just based on history? Because I am wondering if, you know, if we are we have been slimming down with state employees, is there a same reflection in that with workers' comp? I mean, I understand we've had additional claims due to COVID, but I'm kind of thinking, you know, going forward, do we need to be, you know, how are we doing budgeting there? Does that make sense, Bob?
Yes, it does, Representative. It's first of all, the appropriations are determined not necessarily by our unit at DAS. It's based upon often previous expenditures from previous years, and a lot of that is orchestrated by the analysts to determine the appropriate appropriations for each and every budget. And there are 11 different budgets within the state. And we use, we provide a great deal of tracking temporary total, temporary partial payments, PPD payments, 308A, and we provide a number of reports to the agencies, fiscal reports, projection reports, so that, you know, we can prepare for any deficiencies or let them know if they have any surpluses coming closer to fiscal year end.
Okay, and then if you do have surpluses, do you release that, or what do you do?
That would be orchestrated through the agency.
Okay. So even though you've consolidated it up into DAS, the agency still has quite a bit of work that's done over this. So I'm just trying to now understand why we put it all in DAS.
Well, the proposal for the proposal for the next budget of consolidating all the budgets. I don't have a great deal of information, but I can get back to you on that.
That would be great. Not to worry for today, but we can add that to the list. So thank you so much, Bob, and thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Dayton. Commissioner, some questions.
Representative, I think you just hit your mute button there.
I have some questions in regards to monitoring and your construction bids and contracts and stuff. So I understand that kind of falls under your. Do you have a breakdown on the minority and women-owned construction contractors and companies that have put in bids or actually doing work for the state building?
Deputy Commissioner Petra?
Yes, we work with CHRO on all of that work, and I can get you all the reports that you'd like, for sure.
I appreciate it.
Very active.
Forward that too. All right, thank you. Do we have any other committee members that have any questions? No? Okay. Well, seeing none, that'll be all for today. Thank you, Commissioner. And you enjoy the weekend and this staff.
All right. Well, thank you, Representative. Thank you to all the other senators and representatives of the committee. Appreciate your time, and have a great weekend.
You too.